You're listening to The Phillip Jordan Show.
Back by Nobody's a Man But Our Own. Welcome back into another edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. I am Phillip Jordan. Of course, you check me out over at the Auburn Wire. And starting this week, at least for a couple weeks, I'm going to be the producer and board operator for the high school football broadcast for Wolf the Ball here in Dothan. High school football starting up in Alabama this week, so I'm very excited about that. Very excited to be back in the studio producing high school football. Once again, different location. I won't be on air here, but also really excited about the opportunity I've been giving over at Wolf. And got a fun show here on the podcast, too. We're going to get into a lot of different things on the pod. We're going to go over an hour. We've got two guests, but I'm going to lead things off with talking about Jayden Daniels, and then we'll jump into the guest. First up will be the voice of the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. That is Mike Parris. He will be on to talk about the upcoming season for Jacksonville State, and also we will discuss his career in broadcasting. Really fun conversation there. Then after that, I'll be joined by Bob Rose. He is over at the Saints Wire, and we're going to talk about the New Orleans Saints previewed upcoming season, talk a little bit about their preseason game this past week against Jacksonville, and look ahead to the preseason matchup with the Rams this weekend. And then at the end of the show, I'm going to give my top 5 SEC quarterbacks going into 2026, and also some thoughts on some rookie quarterbacks in the NFL preseason. You can check out the Phillip Jordan Show podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Leave a review, and I will read it on a future edition of the show. But if you leave just 4 stars, you're just a straight-up hater. You can also check out the show over on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and please leave a comment on the video. I'll read those on a future edition as well. And also, all the interviews are going to be posted up on YouTube individually, so you can check them out that way if you're just interested in Mike Parris, or if you're just interested in hearing what Bob Rose had to say. Those interviews are up on there and also on the podcast feed as well. Follow me on social media at PJordanSports. You can email me at philipjordanmedia@gmail.com.
All right, so let's jump into the solo segment and the topics, and I want to start things off with Jayden Daniels. So there's been this whole situation going on at LSU involving Jayden Daniels, DJ Pickett, and the number 5 jersey, and I've got some thoughts on this because I think there's blame to go around here. But I also think this has gotten way more complicated than it needed to be. Just to set everything up, Jayden Daniels obviously wore number 5 at LSU. We all know that. He won the Heisman Trophy in 2023. Tremendous year that year. Upset victories. Really thought the program was really going up, and I thought Brian Kelly was going to win a national championship there at LSU after this year with Jayden Daniels. He had an incredible season and became one of the best quarterbacks LSU has ever had. No doubt about that. No one's going to question that he's not one of the best players and quarterbacks LSU has ever had. Now, LSU cornerback DJ Pickett is wearing number 5, and that has created a pretty big mess at LSU. Pickett was apparently promised number 5 when he was recruited to LSU under Brian Kelly, and Lane Kiffin confirmed it after taking over the program. And Kiffin said this: "I want to honor our word when we promised this kid he would get this number." And that's where I think you have to really start handing out the blame for this one. I think Brian Kelly is first to blame of this, and he deserves some of it. Kelly himself acknowledged that he believed number 5 was promised to Pickett during the recruiting process, but Kelly decided not to give Pickett the number last season because Jayden Daniels wasn't comfortable with it. So basically, you had 2 conflicting things going on. You got DJ Pickett being recruited with the understanding that eventually he's going to get number 5, but then you've got Jayden Daniels believing that number 5 is essentially being protected because of what he accomplished at LSU. That's a problem. If you're going to promise a recruit a number, especially a number that was just worn by a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, you better know exactly what you're getting into because you're creating an expectation for that player. Then Brian Kelly leaves, Lane Kiffin comes in and inherits the entire situation, which is unfair on Lane Kiffin's side of it too. And I don't blame Lane Kiffin here. What's he supposed to do? He's trying to keep a talented player on his roster in an era where guys can enter the transfer portal and leave. This isn't a promise Lane Kiffin made. He's trying to honor a promise LSU already made to the player. And Kiffin has basically said that's how he views it. LSU made a commitment to Pickett, and he believes the program should honor its word. And honestly, Lane Kiffin's got no reason to keep a promise to a quarterback that he didn't, have. I mean, when you look at Jayden Daniels, that's the kind of another part of it I feel about it. And I actually think Kiffin would have a bigger problem if he came in and told Pickett, yeah, I know LSU promised you number 5 when you recruited, but we're not going to honor that anymore. What kind of message does that send to your locker room? And I don't blame DJ Pickett either. Pickett has made it pretty clear that he isn't simply about taking Jayden Daniels' number. Number 5 means something to him too. Pickett said, I've worn the number since I was 4, which is why he was promised a number by Brian Kelly. And Pickett's father said something else that stood out to me. We wish in a perfect world that Daniels would have given him his blessing, and that would have solved a lot of this problem. And honestly, I think that would have been the best possible ending to the story. Jayden Daniels gives Pickett his blessing. Pickett gets to wear the number LSU promised him, and every time somebody sees number 5, you can still talk about what Jayden Daniels accomplished wearing it. Instead, we've gone in complete opposite direction, because where I start having a problem with this is Jayden Daniels' reaction. Look, Jayden Daniels was phenomenal at LSU. Nobody can take that away from him. He won the Heisman Trophy. He had an unbelievable 2023 season. LSU fans are going to remember what he did for a very long time. They're still talking about it. But I think he's starting to come across as entitled about the number. Daniels' family said they were deeply disappointed and profoundly disrespected by LSU's decision. And I understand being disappointed. I completely understand having an emotional attachment to number 5. That's your number. You were great at LSU, and you feel like you should be honored for that. That's the number you wore when you won the Heisman Trophy. That's the number people associate with you at LSU. But profoundly disrespected, that's where you start losing me, because that's the difference between being disappointed and acting like nobody else should be allowed to wear the number because you wore it. Then Daniels' representative sent LSU a cease and desist, telling the university to stop using his name, image, and likeness. Now we've gone way beyond being disappointed about a jersey number. Daniels eventually addressed everything publicly and said, there are issues that need to be addressed between my family and LSU. He also said he wanted those issues handled privately and that his focus was on the upcoming NFL season. Is it really? That's where I have doubts with Jayden Daniels. Instead of worrying about your number at LSU, you need to be worrying about the Washington Commanders, because last year that was a team that underperformed. This was a team that the prior year made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. While I say this, they had an easier schedule getting there his rookie year. Sophomore year, second year, they disappointed. It was a disappointing year. Yes, he got injured, but the team was not as good. That's where his focus needs to be, not this whole LSU number situation. But once the cease and desist letters are involved and this becomes a national story, it's not really private anymore, is it? And this is where it becomes really a big deal. And I was just shocked when I saw the story. Here's another part of this that I think matters. Joe Burrow, because everybody immediately started comparing Daniels number 5 to Burrow's number 9. Burrow wore number 9 at LSU, won the Heisman Trophy, and LSU hasn't given that number to another player. Burrow was actually asked about this situation, and to his credit, he didn't jump into the middle of it. When asked about Daniels' dispute, Burrow said, I don't know enough about the situation to have any thoughts. But then he was asked about his own number 9, and Burrow said, yeah, they told me they wouldn't use it again. But, you never know what happens. That's important. LSU specifically told Joe Burrow they wouldn't use number 9 again. And personally, I think Burrow has the stronger case for that kind of treatment anyway. That's not disrespectful to Jayden Daniels. Both guys won the Heisman, but Burrow didn't just win the Heisman. He went 15-0. They won the SEC championship game. They won the national championship. And Burrow led one of the greatest teams and one of the greatest offense we've ever seen in college football. That 2019 LSU team is part of college football history. So if LSU wants to look at Joe Burrow and say nobody else is wearing number 9, I understand that, and most people do. He won the Heisman and delivered a national championship. And LSU apparently told him the number wouldn't be used again. That's different. I don't think winning the Heisman automatically means you own that number at a university forever. Your jersey should absolutely be honored. Your accomplishments should be celebrated. Jayden Daniels should always be welcomed back to LSU and recognized as one of the great players in the program history. But that doesn't necessarily mean number 5 can never be worn again. And honestly, that's why I think Daniels needs to be careful with how far he takes this, because he's potentially ruining a lot of goodwill with LSU fans and the program over something that doesn't change his legacy at all. DJ Pickett wearing number 5 doesn't take Jayden Daniels' Heisman away. It doesn't erase 2023. 20 years from now, when LSU fans talk about Jayden Daniels, they're still going to talk about that season. But if you continue escalating this fight with LSU, Now you're changing the conversation. Instead of everybody simply celebrating Jayden Daniels as a Heisman winner and LSU legend, we're talking about a feud between Daniels and the school over a jersey number, and that's unfortunate. So I'm assigning blame here. Brian Kelly helped create this problem by allowing a promise to be made that ultimately conflicted with how LSU was treating Daniels' number. I don't blame Lane Kiffin for trying to keep a player on his roster to honor a commitment that LSU already made. I don't blame DJ Pickett for wanting the number he was promised, especially when it's a number he's worn since he was a kid. And I understand why Jayden Daniels might initially be upset, but I think the reaction from Daniels' side has gone too far. And I keep coming back to what Pickett's father said. In a perfect world, Daniels gives the kid his blessing. Imagine how differently we're talking about Jayden Daniels right now if that happens. Instead of this becoming a feud, it becomes Jayden Daniels passing number 5 down to the next generation at LSU. That's a great story. Instead, we're talking about lawyers, NIL rights, and whether Daniels feels disrespected by his former school. At some point, you've got to ask yourself what's more important, protecting number 5 ever being worn again, or maintaining a great relationship with the university and fan base where you became a Heisman Trophy winner. For me, that answer is pretty easy.
All right, so that's my thoughts on the whole Jayden Daniels LSU drama that we really dealt with at the end of last week. I'm going to jump into the 2 interviews first with Mike Parris, and then after that, I'll be joined by Bob Rose of the Saints Wire.
Everybody joining me on the show right now is one of the veterans in play-by-play broadcasting in the state, in the country, covering college football, college sports. That's Mike Parris. He is the voice of Jacksonville State Gamecocks. And Mike, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Phillip. I appreciate the offer. And a veteran is a nice way to say that I'm old. Okay, we can go ahead and get that out of the way. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to visit with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've been looking forward to this. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to talking to play-by-play guys, and I think a lot of people looked up to coaches and athletes. I looked up to play-by-play guys, the guys that call the games, as my thing. But I know, appreciate you coming on. 40 plus years doing it there at Jacksonville State, and kind of an interesting program there in Conference USA, coming off another 9 wins a year. They've had 9 wins in each year since they made the jump to FBS. Charles Kelly did a good job last year's team. Right. Just, obviously you've been there, as long as you have, when you're seeing where the program is at now, what's the biggest thing that sticks out to you?
I would say, first of all, was the fact that Rich Rodriguez was our head coach when we made the move from FCS to FBS. Obviously, he's been at some of the best places in the country, but he knew what it was going to take for us to be successful and what to do, and I guess you could say how to push some things through and that sort of thing as well. But I think he gets all the credit from that standpoint as far as getting us going. 3 years at FBS, we were a bowl team in each of those first 3 seasons, and Charles Kelly just added on to that, last year in that 3rd year. Big win over Troy, first time we'd played in about 25 years, so we beat them in a bowl game in Montgomery. And from what I've seen going into this season, I think we have a chance. Some things have got to fall into place. But I think we actually look like an FBS team this year, maybe for the first time since we've made the move. And that's something that Rich Rod talked about and Charles Kelly talked about too, is the fact, getting bigger each year. And he's really made a nice jump, I think, from last year to this year.
And looking at last year, when he comes in year 1, Charles Kelly, which, he's from close down here where I'm at in the Wiregrass area. A lot of players he had to replace. There was, after Rich Rod left to go back to West Virginia, and then to go win 9 wins, I know didn't end the way with a conference championship, but still get there. You mentioned playing Troy in the bowl game, and I like to bring that up because I will admit my age here. Some people say I don't look my age, but I am 39. So I know there was a time where that was a big game. That was a big deal. I've always been, since Jacksonville State moved up to FBS, I'm like, come on, we got to have Troy versus Jacksonville State. What did that mean to the people of Jacksonville State to have that bowl game?
Well, you go back, I guess, to the 23 season. We went to New Orleans, won it in overtime, walked it off, so to speak, on a field goal to end the game. Then in 24, Rich Rod left in between us winning the Conference USA title and heading to a bowl game in Orlando. And then Charles Kelly comes in. And, we hadn't played Troy since 2000, I guess it was 2001, 2002, somewhere in there was the last time that we had played. They had made the move ahead of us. They went from D2 to what was in 1AA, now FCS football. And they were years ahead of us doing that. And then they jumped into FBS shortly after we made the move into what was in 1AA, now FCS football. So we haven't played them since we had been the opening years of FCS. And we had some growing pains, quite honestly, during that time. But as you mentioned, the rivalry, it goes back really to the D2 days. It was an Alabama and Auburn rivalry, just on a little bit smaller scale was what it was. I mean, there was no love lost between the two schools. Even the band, the band director at Troy had come from Jacksonville State too. He's a former marching Southerner, so that just added more into it and everything. So for our people this past year, having not played them in a number of years, and in those last few years, we didn't have any success against them. So to win that game, I know they didn't have some people that played. We played without Cam Cook, who was the nation's leading rusher last year. And we had some guys out as well, but to win the game was, our people enjoyed that. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, one of my best friends, he was actually the best man at my wedding. He's a big supporter of Jacksonville State. So me and him were kind of exchanging texts because obviously there's no secret I'm a student at Troy. So, but I thought it was great. Just from a overall just history, I love that. It's something we're losing with college football. I think the more and more things change is the rivalries, tradition. Right. So it was fun seeing that, and I hope somehow, some way these two can kind of do a little something every now and then in the regular season. That'd be fun.
Yeah, we wholeheartedly agree with you on this end. I think hopefully maybe that'll warm things up when we get back to playing each other on an annual basis.
Yeah, I know a lot of people around here in the Troy area, they all look at the South Alabama game as this big heated rivalry. Right. Like, if you read up and do your research on the Jacksonville State Troy game, it's nothing compared. No offense to South Alabama, but there's no comparison between the two.
Well, actually, with where we are now, Kennesaw State's just roughly an hour and a half from our campus, even though they're in the state of Georgia. So that one has, they've had some success, obviously, since making the move up, too. So that's turning into a rivalry. But, again, I think our people, and it's unfortunate because you've had, 2 decades in there where the students knew nothing about the Jacksonville State-Troy rivalry. So hopefully we can get that changed.
This upcoming year, you mentioned Cam Cook, who's going on, but they're going to replace him at running back. But right. A lot of good players returning on that offense. They got some experienced offensive line. Caden Creel coming back at quarterback, over 1,000 yards rushing, 1,000 yards passing. DeAndre Jordan, that's kind of like a receiver there. That's a mismatch nightmare. I know Jacksonville State doesn't throw it a lot, but when you got a guy that's 6'8", 220 like that, can just go and get anything. Very dangerous player there. So, yeah, they got to find who's their new star running back's going to be or how they're going to do that. But they got plenty of talented players on that offense still.
I think right now, at least in the early part of the season, it's probably going to be by committee to begin with. And if somebody gets a hot hand in the game, you ride him. There's 4 guys I think that we'll see play quite a bit the first couple of games. And you mentioned Caden Creel. I think he officially took over week 3, week 4 last year for us in the Southern Miss game. He didn't start, came into the game, and then he was the starting quarterback the rest of the season. And you can see a difference in him already in camp. I think it's after having a year under his belt. And I mentioned the 4 running backs. You mentioned Johnson at wide receiver, big guy. Hopefully we've got more depth in the wide receiver room. I think is better right now than it was at this time last year. I think we've got 3-4 different tight ends are going to play. But it all starts up front with those guys. And we do have, as you mentioned, some guys back. Our center, Marachkovsky's a guy who's a preseason all-conference guy. Came out of nowhere really last year for us. We've got Lance Johnson and Jeremiah Orr back as well on the offensive line. So, and we've got some size up there, added a little bit of beef up front as well. So, and I think just the fact that Creel's got a year experience as a quarterback helps us tremendously from where we were this time last year. Now we got to develop, I think, a number 2 guy in case something happens to him.
Yeah, and that's always a worry when you use your quarterback that much in the run game. Keeping them healthy, and having somebody behind them that can do that as well.
Christian Lando's a name I think that you're going to hear some. He had a talented young man, terrific high school career coming out of Cartersville, Georgia, which is an outstanding high school football program. Mm-hmm. I've gone brain dead here. We had some guys that actually stepped up in the bowl game and, showed that they could do a little bit as well. Jalen Likely's a guy that played some there in that game last year, so you'll probably see him quite a bit in the early going. Those are probably the top two guys at this point in time. That's just my assumption, my guess. I haven't seen a depth chart or anything, but those two will play quite a bit, I think, there as well. And as you mentioned, Johnson at 6'8", he was a guy that had a slow start last year. He transferred from Rutgers, had not played much there, and he was looking for somewhere where he could go to play. And he had a few drops in the early going of the season last year, but boy, the second half of the year, and he was terrific. And you could argue that he could have been the MVP in the bowl game last year because he had a big night, over 100 yards receiving against Troy in the bowl game last year.
Yeah, 24 yards a catch is pretty good.
Yes.
So when he gets the ball, it's for a big amount of yardage. 30 catches, over 700 yards. But you get that 24 yards per catch is always a good thing for any quarterback. Just, hey, you don't do this, but it's almost in your head like, okay, nobody's open. Let me just throw it up there. Maybe he can haul one down. Yeah, the defense has got a lot of guys coming back too as well. And I think that's a big difference. I'm sure Charles Kelly, head coach, is very happy that it didn't have to replace too many guys like he did before when he came in. But Max Sanders, you got Walker Osteen, and Caleb Nix, some top tacklers from last year coming back.
Right. Well, this time last year, our secondary was in flux because everybody was new except for one. We didn't know who was going to play back there, I think, this time last year. Max Sanders is a guy that terrific linebacker, played a lot as a true freshman last year. He's got good size, he can run. He's 6'2", 225. He played shortstop in high school baseball at 6'2", 225, and he actually could have played baseball in college had he wanted to, but he wanted to play football. He played quite a bit. You mentioned Walker Osteen. He's from roughly 8 miles from campus, and a guy who has built his body and can run. He'll play at outside linebacker, walk up, maybe play at the end spot a little bit as well. But he's really made a lot of progress. His older brother was on the offensive line for 3 years for us, started every game, and then played his last year for North Carolina last year, as a matter of fact. So you mentioned Nix. Caleb had a tremendous year. I think he's a preseason All-American. He and Traquan Fagans both are on the Thorpe Award watch list. Caleb led the league in interceptions last year. He had a tremendous season, and Fagans was really, I guess you could say, a shutdown corner for us last year as well. So you got those guys back. So you got some experience. Sanders and Osteen at linebacker. We did lose a couple of guys up front, but Jawan Campbell's played a lot, started a lot in his career. So this is his junior season coming up. So I guess I could say he's the anchor of the defensive front for us going into the season.
Yeah, and Caleb, I was looking just at playmaking ability. 4 interceptions, a touchdown, 3 fumble recoveries. Just a tremendous, when you have somebody back there that can just make plays. If the ball's around, did you know he can make something happen? That's just got to give, obviously, on the defense. I mean, they have got to be loving that.
He, I think we led the league in interceptions or near the top of the league last year, as I recall. And you mentioned Caleb and what he's done. Not only that, he was not the punt returner when the year started, but we had trouble hanging on the football at times back there. So he ended up, if nothing else, just going back there to catch it. But he had a couple of nice punt returns during the course of the season. Had one against Troy in the bowl game also. So I think he'll be back there at least to begin the season on punt returns for us too. And the kicking game, we got an excellent kicker, Garrison Ripa, the preseason specialist of the year in Conference USA, and he hit the game-winning field goal. First game he'd ever kicked in college in the bowl game. Our kicker entered the portal before the bowl game that year in 23, and then so he comes in, kicks the game-winning field goal, and he kicked a 50-yarder in the bowl game in Montgomery last year against Troy as well. So we're in pretty good shape with him, and Connor Donagy coming back as well in the punting game.
Yeah, it's always a situation when your kicker hits the portal. That's always the different thing. He's really, really, really good if a kicker can jump in the portal and go somewhere else. That's always the thing with that. And for people wondering, Caleb Nix is the brother of Bo Nix. So a lot of people, I remember my high school stuff with Dothan going against Central, and I had Caleb Nix there at quarterback. So, but anyways, he's made his name as a defensive back now. When you look, ahead for this year? And I've been looking at some stuff, and I know Conference USA doesn't put out an official media poll like a lot of the other conferences do.
Right.
It looks like a lot of people got Jacksonville State at number 3. Is that kind of where are you seeing them?
I think anywhere from 1 to 3, probably. I think Liberty will be better than they were last year. How much better, I don't know. Kennesaw lost a lot of pieces, so we'll see how they are. I think they surprised some people. FIU maybe surprised a few people last year, and I think they have a chance to be pretty good. They've got their quarterback back, so I think they've got a chance to be pretty good as well. Western, year in, year out, is going to be top 3 of the league. So I think it'll be like it was last year. I think it'll be 3 or 4 teams vying for it. We've been fortunate the 2 years we've been eligible since making the move in 24 and 25. We've hosted the championship game both years. Won at 24. Unfortunately, got beat at home last year, and I think the league will be again it's pretty tight throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, and in that opener, week 0 at North Dakota State, should be interesting.
Yes, to say the least. Never been to the Fargo Dome. I understand it's got some age on it, but also I've been told it is a nice venue, neat venue, and you're in Fargo, North Dakota. What are you gonna do on Saturdays except go to college football games? I guess it seats somewhere in the 22 to 24,000, and it'll be packed. So indoors that'll make it that much louder as well, and we have a little bit of history of them. Played them in the FCS championship game in January of 2016 in Frisco, Texas. But go back to the Division II days. I think played 3 or 4 times in the playoffs back in the D2 days. In fact, I've been around long enough that I did one of those games when we played them in the postseason playoffs. And I think it dates back, the first time they played was maybe 77 in the playoffs in Division II. So here's a little bit of history there. And, they had some guy named Wentz that had been injured the part of the season in 2015, and he's healthy by January of 2016, and saw why he was going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, why he was the second, third guy taken in the draft that year. So he had a pretty good day against us in the championship game. So I'm looking forward to it, though. It should be an experience, and an experience for the guys, too, to go in there and play in that venue.
Yeah, absolutely. And gives fans a little something to watch for the full week 1 that hits. And it's going to be fun looking at what they're going to do this season. But looking over your career, and as I mentioned at the top, 40-plus years there at Jacksonville State calling games. And how did it first come about? How did you become the voice of the Gamecocks?
Well, as I said, I'm old, so this will be year 44. We had a local TV station, CBS affiliate, that actually had a friend of mine that put me onto the fact they might be looking for a sports guy. So I came over and actually did an audition tape for them. And as it turned out, their sports guy didn't leave. He actually hung around for several more years after that. So the news director said we were in the radio station, WHMA, AM and FM was in the same building with the TV station at that time in downtown Anniston. So he said, I'll just take your tapes downstairs and turn them over to them. They may have something. And fortunately, they did. So I came to work in Anniston in August of 83, the week high school football season started, as a matter of fact. So I go to work on Monday, do a high school game on Thursday night. I knew nothing about anybody in that area over there and whatnot, being from the state of Georgia. So, but I moved to Anderson and never left, I guess is the best way I can put it. So it just, I replaced a guy in Malcolm Street who was a legend. He did it for somewhere in the neighborhood 45 years. Honestly, don't know how many years. It might have been more than 45, but somewhere in that neighborhood. And so he and I basically split them up in 83, and I took over for the most part then in the 84 season.
Yeah, and just kind of like over that course of time, and I kind of touched on it beginning, with their move to, FBS, but going from, like you mentioned, Division II, and then going up to, what was Division I, FCS is what people know it as now. And then obviously, with the FBS stuff, just, for you, just as being there, calling these games, just seeing this program grow and grow and grow, going to different levels and reaching different heights.
I got to be honest with you. I never really thought we'd make the move. We'd be where we are now at FBS. 2010, I'll say refurbished the stadium, basically redid the stadium, and it looks really nothing now like it did at that point in time. So between that and the total program with what we did at Pete Matthews Coliseum with upgrades for it, our baseball facility is probably as good at Liberty's. You might argue might be a little better than ours, but we're on par with everybody in Conference USA. And when visitors come to town play us in baseball, even the SEC schools, they talk about how nice it is. And so I got to tell you, I just didn't expect it or didn't see that back in 1983 at Jacksonville State when all this started. But it's nice to have seen the growth and the expansion, I'll put it, and the way the school has moved during that course of time.
So for you, kind of going back in reverse, when did you know you wanted to do this? What was like your big influence in that?
Well, I'll tell you what I tell people usually because it's the one question I get asked. My dad says that I actually learned to read by picking up the sports page of a newspaper. I don't know, I don't remember that, but I do remember getting the sports pages to check scores and whatnot, baseball games in particular. But I grew up a very small town in the mountains up in North Georgia, so I was outside playing by myself a lot, so I guess you could say I created my own games. And I grew up listening to Milo Hamilton with doing the Braves games. Skip Carey, actually at that time, was doing Atlanta Hawks basketball. He had come with them from St. Louis to Atlanta. So my first memory of Skip Carey is doing Atlanta Hawks basketball. And then a guy by the name of Ed Thelenius at that time was doing Georgia football. And then Larry Munson came in to take over for him. Ed Thelenius left and became, I guess he went to work for CBS doing the Atlanta Falcons games at that time in the, late 60s when the Falcons came into existence. So I grew up listening to the radio, and that just sort of intrigued me, I guess, and my interest there. And I love Milo Hamilton. Ernie Johnson worked with him, and I lived in New Orleans for a little while. Got John Ferguson, heard him some when I was out in Louisiana. And where we were in Georgia, Tennessee, I've gone brain dead now. The guy that did it forever at Tennessee, John Ward, got to hear him some as a child as well. So it's listening to those guys and just I love sports. It's all I've ever done. So, but I guess you could say that's what got my curiosity piqued and got my interest into it.
Yeah, it is always to me, interesting, with radio because, the listener, especially know that they could see it, and a lot of times, every game's on TV now, but back in the day, you wanted to follow your team, you had to listen on the radio. And then the play-by-play guy was painting that picture, left to right on your dial and all that other kind of stuff that you would hear. What goes through your process, now, as you get ready to call a game?
I still do some of that, and I'm thinking, well, somebody's probably listening on their phone, or their watch or whatever right now. But I go through a lot of that as well, and I guess you could say I'm a throwback to the old days. And look, I won't deny it. I'm a homer. Now, if we're not playing good, I will tell you that too. But, I'm a homer, and I want Jacksonville State to win because it makes my job easier when we win. So, I guess I don't know that I've really patterned myself after anybody. Just taking some things, and even today, when I'm driving, going somewhere, headed to a ball game, if we're on the road or whatnot, I'm listening to guys all over the country now, and that's the neat thing about what I do. I've been able to meet some great people, and in Conference USA, well, we got some great guys right now. The other play-by-play guys in our league, and as you and I were talking before we started this, you're doing all the guys across the state. So, I've known Barry for a number of years. I first met Andy Burcham when he was doing women's basketball at Auburn. Brad Laws grew up at Piedmont, about 10 miles from our campus, and known Brad since he was in high school. Chris Stewart and I have been friends from going to his days, before he was at Alabama, when he was Birmingham Southern, actually doing some things there. And then, other guys, just all Power 4 guys or whatever, all across the country met people. And, I get a text, I'm, getting ready to go for a game. And I met Bob Beeler a few years back. He's at Boise State. And very rarely on a Saturday before a football game do I not get a text from him, have a good call today or something like that, So it's just that's what makes this. Everybody knows what you're going through, what you're up against, I guess. Those other guys do.
In over the years, a lot of big moments at Jacksonville State. A 1992 national championship Called a couple of, you just mentioned one, 2015, where they played North Dakota State, some in baseball and basketball too as well. I have to bring up two of the calls that heard nationwide, the 2010 upset over Ole Miss in double overtime, and then of course the Hail Mary against Florida State in 2021. What are some of those memories or calls that really stick out to you?
I know some people probably would think they would disagree with me or say I'm crazy, but I was fortunate enough, national championships we won in football, basketball, baseball. In fact, basketball, my second year, we won the national title in basketball. And I thought, this is pretty cool. I could do this every year. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way all the time. But I was blessed. We won back-to-back D2 World Series. They were in Montgomery. We won our last year in Division II in football. We won the title in '92, and the championship game was in Florence. So those are always going to be at the top and near the top of the list. Our bowl game, quite honestly, in '23, we beat Louisiana, Lafayette, in the bowl game in New Orleans, and to win it in the fashion we did. We weren't eligible to be in a bowl game, but we got in because we were bowl eligible record-wise, and there weren't enough bowl eligible teams. So the NCAA granted a waiver, and that's how we got in, and we win that. So that stands out. You mentioned the Ole Miss and the Florida State games, two different types of deals there. The Ole Miss game was 31-3 going to the fourth quarter, I think was what it was, and we caught lightning in a bottle, so to speak. And that was, I never had experienced anything quite like that because I'm riding. After I got finished, I got word they wanted some sound to ESPN. Did that and get it into them. So I'm driving back from Oxford, Mississippi, and phone's blowing up, calls, text messages, and everything. Hey, heard you here, heard you there, or whatnot. And that was, that went on for a little while. So selfishly, I guess I could say it was pretty neat to experience that. The Florida State game to me is a little different. The fact with the program that they had and all the success they had, and everything. And actually, we were in that game all night long. We led it for part of the game, and they come back and take the lead in the fourth quarter, and then new guy on the team makes a play for us and makes a catch for the touchdown. So. But that one will always stand out for being down there. We had played down there in '09 and led them to the last minute of the game in '09. And they scored and went ahead, kickoff, and we fumble it, and they score again. So the score didn't look like it, but it was we were up 9-6, I think it was, in the final minute of the game, and then they get two touchdowns in the last minute and beat us 19-9. And then in 20, in the pandemic, we go down there. We led them in the third quarter of the game, and they came back and beat us. So we finally got them the third time was the charm, as the old saying goes. And that one sticks out. Baseball, our first win in regional play at Division I. We beat Clemson and Illinois in a regional in Oxford at Ole Miss. We got to the regional final there. And I really go back to 2014, our baseball team. We lost the first game in the tournament, OVC tournament that year, and came back through the losers bracket and eliminated. It was a 6-team event. We eliminated the other 5 teams. And if you know anything about baseball, you know how tough that is to do. So, and our guys were obviously dead dog tired. We got beat, I guess. It was a Thursday, but we played 2 Friday, 2 Saturday, and another one on Sunday. Let me back up. We played Thursday, 1 Thursday, 2 Friday, and 2 Saturday. Won 5 in a row after losing on Wednesday night, our first game. So that's a pretty sweet accomplishment. And then we've been in the NCAA basketball tournament twice since we made the move to Division I. I didn't know if we were going to get there, so we made it in 2017. Rick Pitino's last win as Louisville's head coach, as a matter of fact. You want some trivia, was against us. In that one, in the NCAA regional, we were in Indianapolis, and then in 22 went to Greenville to play Auburn in the opening round.
Remember that one? First half, I thought that Jacksonville State would not miss a single three. The way that one was going.
We had some guys that could score, but Auburn was pretty good that year too. So, but it's and I used to do quite a bit of softball. They lost first game of a regional in Knoxville, came back through, won the regional, went to a super regional in Tuscaloosa against Alabama, and had some other walk off against Ole Miss at home in the extra inning game. So it's I've been blessed, been very fortunate through the years. That I've been a part of a lot of big and key moments in Jacksonville State history.
That's great. That's great. And then you talk about Auburn. I still remember the 2012 football game where Jacksonville State scared the daylights out of the Auburn football, which was not a good year for Auburn football. It turned out, but still.
They were, I think, number 6, I think, at that time going into the game. And I had, people that had texted me, in Tuscaloosa and other venues in the SEC, hey, y'all hang on and win it or whatnot. And I thought we did everything but win the game, quite honestly. And unfortunately got beaten overtime. But that was the 2015 season, the year we went to the national championship in FCS football. So, and I think we're going back to Auburn next year, as a matter of fact. Be the first time we played since then. So looking forward to that.
Look, this is going to sound like me throwing shade at Alabama, and I do not. It's going to come off that way, especially knowing people know I write at Auburn Wire, so they're going to say, "Oh, the Auburn writer taking a shot at Alabama." Oh, but at least Auburn will play the in-state schools outside of Alabama State and Alabama A&M. They played South Alabama this past year. They're playing Troy in the future. They're, of course, obviously playing Jacksonville State. At least Auburn of the two will play the other schools in the state. I'm just going to say that.
I'm not going to say anything except that discussion's above my head. I'll put it that way.
Well, people can hit me up at P. Jordan Sports, and I'll be glad to talk to them about it. 2 more questions, and then I'll let you out of here. Right. You talked about, people now can listen to your broadcast on their phone or, on their watch or so many different ways. Right. And it's a very broad question, but how have you seen the business change since when you first got into how it is now?
Well, my folks they couldn't listen to me, but now they're able to, in some form or fashion, they can pick up a broadcast either off of an app or through the web stream, audio stream that we do or whatnot. So, it's in the old days, you tried to find as many affiliates as you could, and you still want affiliates now from that matter, but I guess that's one big difference in what's going on. And I don't know if it's this way nationwide, but I still say in the South, radio is a big deal for college football because most of the people have grown up listening to one particular person, generally, at their favorite school and the school that they cheer for, root for, or whatever. And I think it's still a pretty big deal. I think if you talk to other broadcasters, they probably get the feedback that, even the games may be on TV. Hey, we turn it down, we listen to you, and that sort of thing and whatnot. So, and at first you couldn't do this, but I think now there are ways too, depending on which way you listen, that you can actually match up the radio audio with the video from television as well. So those are 2 things in the delivery. And when I say delivery, the way it's fed, I think the sound is much better than it was, when I was growing up, and even maybe till the turn of the century here to into 2000, as everything is more digital and whatnot. Our sound should be better than what it used to be in the old days.
Anybody listening to this is interested in getting into broadcasting. What would be probably the biggest piece of advice you could give them?
I will tell you what somebody told me years ago. And you can't pick up a newspaper or a magazine hardly now and read it. But the advice I got for one thing, and the biggest problem a lot of people have, is either talking or getting used to hearing themselves talking. So the best advice for me that I ever got was to grab the newspaper, a magazine, or a book, and just practice talking and reading, if you will, and hearing yourself, or turn the sound down on the TV and call a game while you're sitting there watching it. Now your folks may not like it, or your wife, or whatever, so you may have to go to another room to do it that way. But just practice is what it is. I'd say that's the biggest thing, getting comfortable, getting used to talking, being able to ad lib. And I think that's what has helped me through the years with ad libbing, is, doing that, sitting down and just going through a newspaper, or as it was in the old days, kids now don't know what a newspaper is, I guess. So, but just being able to do that and just practice doing it all the time, because there's a game on every day, every night, it seems. What we get to is sometime in October, there's like 50 something straight days where there's a football game on between college and NFL. So there's
Yeah,
plenty of opportunities. Or, you can go online and find one that's archived and practice that way too.
yeah, absolutely. And it's just wild now because now you can just connect to a high school and just say, hey, I want to call your games, and they can hook you up with the NFHS thing, or you can just stream it yourself. It's just, it's interesting how, there are chances to do so many different things. All right, this has been fun having you on the show. Like I said, I'm a nerd for these conversations with play-by-play guys. I don't really have as many color analysts. It's usually just the play-by-play guys I really I enjoy talking to, and it's been a lot of fun. For listeners and viewers checking this out, where can they find you? And is there online? Where can they check out the Jacksonville State broadcast if they want to listen in?
We have we'll have somewhere 8 to 10 affiliates, and they're mostly, I guess you'd say, in the northern part of the state. We have an affiliate in Montgomery, but generally, if you're out of the area, the best way would be through our website, jackstatesports.com. You can access the broadcast that way through our audio stream, or our affiliates are listed on the website. A lot of them have apps, so they have their own stream as well that you can go to. We don't limit them like Major League Baseball does. We don't hold them down to not being able to do anything. So, but that's probably the best way to do it, would be that way.
All right, everybody, go check it out. If you want to listen to Jacksonville State, go up to North Dakota State on the 29th. You can listen to Mike's call on that one. And Mike, I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
Look forward to it. Thank you, Phillip. Appreciate the time.
Everybody, next up on the show, and I wanted to talk New Orleans Saints, and when I do that, I go to my guy, Bob Rose. You can check him out. He covers the Saints over at the Saints Wire. Of course, I'm at the Auburn Wire, so a little connection there with USA Today and all stuff. But Bob, appreciate you coming on, talking about the Saints.
Phillip, I appreciate you having me on. I mean, we're a part of the USA Today family, so we take care of each other, right?
That's it. And kind of interesting with the Saints coming off the preseason game, which not a lot of starters were in that one. So obviously, a lot of backups in that first one. Teams do it different. Every team does it differently. Mm-hmm. But big news this week with a rookie wide receiver, Jordan Tyson, looked like he could be out for 2 months with a hamstring injury. Your thoughts on the injury and how this could change things up for the Saints and with the wide receivers?
Man, that's a crushing blow because Jordan Tyson's a player, man. He's a dog. But a lot of people had some injury concerns about him, including myself, coming into the draft, where he can play, but how much of an issue are his knees or his hamstrings going to be? And we've already seen that creep up twice, with Jordan. And and talking to a couple former players that I'm fortunate enough to be friends with, they've shown the same concern off the record. And I listen, I had to agree with them. I said, if he looks like an all-pro, that's great, but I need him to be on the field for more than 5 or 6 games a year. Now, fingers crossed that this isn't going to be a recurring issue with Jordan. Because it's football. Players get pro sports. Players get hurt. It happens. Mm-hmm. As far as how it affects the Saints, I mean, obviously Jordan Tyson was probably going to be the starter alongside Chris Olave. So it makes you dig down your depth chart a little bit deeper. But at least early indications from camp are this is a deeper wide receiver room for the New Orleans Saints than we've seen in quite some time. Barian Brown is playing very well at camp. Had a good preseason showing against the Jaguars himself. Bryce Lance has had a few nice practices. And Bub Means is starting to come on strong after being injured all of last year. As long as those guys can continue their progression, you have Olave, you have Devon Bailey, 2 receivers that Tyler Shough had great chemistry with last year. You love to have a Jordan Tyson in the lineup, but you don't want to rush this recovery back. You want him to be 100% or as close to 100% as possible, before he takes the field. And again, the fact that you have Olave and so many different weapons at running back and tight end too, I don't think that this cripples the Saints as much as this kind of injury would in recent years past.
You brought up Tyler Shough, and looking into this year with the Saints, kind of looking, and you look at the grand scheme of NFC North. I'm not high on the Panthers. I'm not high on the Falcons. Just know that. You got the Buccaneers, who I think a lot of people favor in the division, but I feel like there's a lot of positivity with the Saints. Maybe they could be that number 2 team Coming off how they played last season when Tyler Shough took over quarterback. I mean, they were 1-7, and then he goes 5-4 as your starting quarterback. Played really well, got a good connection with Chris Olave. So when you look at this team after one preseason game, kind of in the midst of training camp, do you feel like there's some real positivity with this team versus where it was last year?
Oh, 100%. Not just last year, but really in the last 5 or 6 years. I think the Saints did a magnificent job at, recognizing the problems they had on their roster, the weak spots, and then were very aggressive in trying to fill those holes. Now, a lot of them were with draft picks. So, I mean, you never know how a draft pick is going to turn out until it happens, for better or for worse. But you can't say that the Saints and Kellen Moore and Mickey Loomis didn't do their due diligence. Hey, we need a new featured running back. Boom, done. We need more talent in our receiver room and our tight end position. Boom, done. So they certainly were aggressive as far as that goes. And honestly, I don't understand why more people aren't talking about the Saints as at least a dark horse favorite in the NFC South. Because like you said, the Falcons. First of all, we know that they're always going to Falcon, but I don't see any significant roster improvements over there. I don't see any significant roster improvements with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If anything, on paper, that roster looks deeper and in dire need of leadership, because they lost a couple of longtime leaders over there. The Panthers, coming off of an NFC South title themselves, they have, like the Saints, they have a pretty young roster. But again, you look down that depth chart and you can point out, a bunch of holes there. So I know I sound like a homer when I say this, but the Saints are my NFC South favorite, at least going into the preseason.
Yeah, again, when you end the year like they did, I mean, the momentum and carrying in, when you bring a lot of those guys back, like momentum can carry over to training camp and into the season. Kellen Moore, after year one, I think I remember had you on the show when he got hired. And they start 1-7, but then you make the change at quarterback, and then, like we just mentioned, you went 5-4. How would you grade Kellen Moore right now as a head coach?
Man, I think Moore and that entire staff did a magnificent job at keeping the team together after such a poor start. If you look a little bit deeper at that strong finish, they did it without literally anyone at wide receiver and literally no one at running back, and some injuries affected through the defense too. So I don't think Kellen Moore gets enough credit for how strongly that team finished. He was more aggressive. Overall, I mean, we've always known he's a good play caller as an offensive mind, but he was overall more aggressive as a head coach than what I anticipated him to be. I hope that aggressiveness carries over. Brandon Staley, he's one of the finest defensive minds in the NFL, a coordinator, so he is going to put together a tough and rugged unit. I think it's going to take some time for those new offensive pieces to come together. So don't expect this to be the next reincarnation of the 2011 Saints or anything like that. But I do think that we're going to see some significant improvement as the season progresses on the offensive side. And Moore, just like the talent and the players on the field, Moore has to develop as a head coach too. But I certainly love the direction that it's going.
Look at running back. I mean, of course, Alvin Kamara, a legendary Saint with what he's done there, but obviously aging, and obviously that's been seen last couple of years. They bring in Travis Etienne, kind of take over the starting running back role. How do you see that working? Because it's now with Alvin Kamara, he can still give you some big plays, but not as much on his plate to be like the only back, carrying with all the carries.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how Kellen Moore, uses Alvin Kamara, because it's very, very clear that they went into the offseason thinking we want ourselves a different featured back. They identified Travis Etienne as the guy that Kellen Moore wanted for his offense, and we're very aggressive in going out to get him. I really like his explosiveness. He's tailor-made for the running scheme that Kellen Moore wants to employ. And, again, you look at Etienne and you look at Kamara, that's a heck of a 1-2 punch on paper. And, as you said, it now allows the Saints to use Kamara more with, more in line with what Kamara's best attributes were. And that's not running him into the teeth of the defense 20 and 22 times a game. That's getting him in space, throwing him swing passes, maybe even letting him run some wide out patterns, from the slot or in motion. I hope that that's the way that they use Kamara. But to do so, ATN has to not only stay healthy, but remain effective.
Yeah, and I remember when Alvin Kamara was probably his best with Saints was in that role. When Drew Brees was their quarterback and Sean Payton, kind of the way they used him in that role. You had a feature back there, but he would come in as really another pass catching weapon. And you mentioned Saints are deep at receiver. You just add another player there. They've got some good tight ends too on this team too. They're loaded at tight end. Just looking at the three guys they got on there now.
Oh, man, I love the tight end spot. Jawan Johnson, really underrated as a pass catcher. I'm glad that Saints finally addressed the tight end spot earlier in the draft rather than a late day 3 pick. And it surprised me when they signed Noah Fant also. You'd be hard pressed to name me the last time the Saints had 3 legitimate pass-catching threats at tight end. Heck, you have to go back over a decade to name me the last time to name the last time the Saints had 2 legitimate threats at tight end when Ben Watson and Jimmy Graham were still Saints.
Yeah, it's been a bit. And look, Oscar Delp, another guy. Georgia is a tight end factory right now.
Yeah.
The guys that are coming from Georgia at that position, I think they're loaded again at the position that the Georgia Bulldogs are. So, NFL teams probably looking for more tight ends at Georgia. And, of course, coming off the preseason, and I think we all know, obviously, Tyler Shough's the starting quarterback. No question there. Backup quarterback, they bring in Zach Wilson, and you've got Spencer Rattler. I mean, Wilson was 11-16, 145, and a touchdown in the preseason game. Rattler, 8 of 11, 42 yards. He didn't throw a touchdown. Who do you see being the backup to Tyler Shough?
I think coming into training camp, the prohibitive favor was undoubtedly Spencer Rattler because he did show some progress, some development last year. Plus he knows Kellen Moore's system. But at least in the first preseason game, and even in the scrimmages against the Jaguars before that, we've seen the same old Rattler. Questionable pocket awareness, seems to struggle reading a defense. And, the completion percentage is always going to be nice. But I look at the 5.2 or 5.3 yards per completion. Yeah, man, we just got done talking about the weapons you have at tight end, the weapons you have at wide receiver. You have to make plays down the field, and you need a quarterback that's going to be aggressive in doing that. And, Zach Wilson at least shows you that aggressiveness. I won't lie. I do not feel comfortable with either as a backup quarterback. But if you're looking at early preseason performances, you got to believe that maybe Zach Wilson has edged ahead of Spencer Rattler a little bit. I'm interested to see how the rest of this competition is going to go through the last 2 preseason games.
When I'm preparing for our interview, I read your good, the bad, and ugly of the preseason game. You focus on linebacker, and if one thing catches my eye, linebacker is going to be weird with the no Demario Davis.
Yeah,
really was a leader for this team, both sides of football, just a straight up leader for this team. They bring in Caden Ellis, through free agency. Pass rush is a big part of it too, as well. And you guys you highlighted picked up some sacks in the preseason game. How are you feeling on their linebacker room?
Truthfully, Phillip, I'm feeling actually a little bit better. I don't think enough people showed a big enough concern about this position after losing Davis. Don't get me wrong. I've always loved Caden Ellis as a player. He's going to be the captain and the play caller of that defense. But my concern was the athleticism. Not just the leadership that you lost with Demario Davis, but the instincts and the overall athleticism. Pete Werner doesn't have either. Danny Stutzman, I'm a huge Danny Stutzman fan, but it's fair to question his open field athleticism. I do like the signing of Deion Jones to at least kick the tires and see what he has left. I'd like to see, I want to see Isaiah Stallbird used in more defensive packages, after as much disruption as that young man created last year. And I love to see the development from Jalen Ford, at least so far this preseason and through that first game against Jacksonville. I don't know if this position would be considered a strength, but if Jalen Ford can finally develop and they start using Isaiah Stallbert on more defensive reps, I do think that you'll see a different looking Saints linebacker core, where maybe Brandon Staley can use Caden Ellis more as a pass rusher because he has someone like Stallbert or Ford behind him in coverage packages in certain situations.
I talked about Davis being a veteran and a leader that was on this team. Cameron Jordan's still there.
Yes, sir.
He's dealing with a hamstring. What do you see the kind of player he is at this stage of his career?
I think, Cam's going to come in great shape, and he's going to ball out to the best of his ability. He showed all of us last year he still has some left in the tank. I think Brandon Staley is going to try to use Cam Jordan as much as he can in certain situations because you don't want that body to wear down come December and January when the games mean so much more. But to be successful in doing that, you got to get something from Carl Granderson or maybe some of the younger edge rushers, whether it's Tyree Wilson or Mike Heldman, one of those guys. Jordan is going to bring invaluable leadership to that locker room. We've already seen what kind of effect his leadership and mentor abilities has had on Chase Young. I'm hoping it does that kind of thing for Tyree Wilson and Michael Heldman also. But I guarantee you this, Cam Jordan is going to give you 100% whatever he has left. I just hope that the Saints have enough of an edge rusher rotation where they don't have to wear Cam Jordan down early in the year.
Other than some of the things talked about, obviously the preseason game coming off of that, and then of course training camp going on as it has been with the Saints. What's a player that's maybe an under radar player you've kind of heard or seen that's standing out?
I go back to Bub Means. People forget what kind of development he was showing as a rookie 2 years ago. Had a nice chemistry with Spencer Rattler too. But then Bub had his own injury issues, as did seemingly the rest of the receiving core that year. And then Means got off to a really poor start to camp last year before he got hurt and missed the entire year. Going back to his days at Pitt and even Louisiana Tech before that, Bub Means is excels on contested catches and excels in traffic. And nothing gives a young quarterback better confidence, faster confidence than knowing that you have a guy or a couple guys that you can throw the ball to in tight coverage and they're going to make the plays. So I think Bub Means is flying under the radar a little bit. Everybody wants to talk about the three rookie wide receivers, and rightfully so. All three have had great moments. But don't discount Bub Means as having a legitimate impact for the New Orleans offense. And on defense, you didn't see it as much in the Jacksonville game because he really didn't get very many reps, if any at all. I'd have to go back and look. But Vernon Brockton, has really been playing well. And that's another player we really didn't get to see what he could truly do as a rookie because he was injured for the year and after week 1, week 2. But I think Vernon Brockton is the main reason why the Saints weren't hitting the panic button and scouring the waiver wire for defensive linemen after they lost Brian Bresee, because I think that they like what they have in Brockton. He gives you some muscle and athleticism along with a little bit of versatility up front. I'm not necessarily predicting a breakout year, but I think Vernon Brockton is going to be one of the linchpins for that Saints front 3, front 4.
And last question, of course, this Saturday, second preseason game will be at the Rams, 3:00 Central Time. That will be on, I believe, ESPN Unlimited. But what's going to be like one thing that you're really going to be looking out for in that game?
Better performance from the offensive line. I don't expect any of the 5 starters to play. Probably going to be similar to game 1 against Jacksonville, where very, very few of the starters see any action at all. So if you want to see the starters in action, pay attention to those scrimmages that they're going to have in the final couple days of this week. But the Saints need to show that they have some competent offensive line depth. In my opinion, they did not show that against Jacksonville. Didn't do their running game or Spencer Rattler or Zach Wilson any favors. Overall, you want to see a more cohesive offense, one that's going to be able to move the football. But that starts with the big uglies up front. They have to be able to protect their quarterback. They have to be able to open up lanes, for whoever the running back is, whether it's Devin Neal, Audric Estime, or your guys at the top. Defensively, you want to see continued pressure, from the edge. We mentioned Hellman, but Garrett Nelson and Fadil Diggs also got a couple of sacks apiece, and some really nice pressures. Also, we just got done talking about how you want to save Cam Jordan as much as possible until the year's end. Well, to be able to do that, you need something from that edge rusher opposite whoever the edge rusher is going to be opposite of Chase Young, and if they can put together some kind of rotation, that's all the better for Cam and the entire defense.
Front offensive line, got to protect the quarterback, Tyler Shough. It's that is the most important part of the team, in my opinion, is that offensive line. The line play, that's where it's all won. But we like talking about the position players. They're the exciting players, but them guys at front are the guys that do it. Well, Bob, I appreciate you coming on. Always enjoy the time talking all things New Orleans Saints. If the listeners and viewers will check out online, where can they find you?
Oh, Phillip, thank you for having me on. Let's do this a couple times during the regular season, too. Got to have you on my Bayou Blitz. Speaking of which, folks, if you are a podcast fan, especially of the New Orleans Saints, check out my weekly show. My co-host, Brendan Boylan, and I, it's called the Bayou Blitz. We typically like to go on live at 8 p.m. Central on Wednesdays, but sometimes we move that schedule around. You can subscribe for free to the Bayou Blitz to get all updates and view past shows on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your favorite shows. You can catch my written work done over at the Saints Wire. As Phillip said earlier, it's a USA Today publication. Saints Wire is available on all Google platforms as well. And if you want to follow me personally, and I always post my article links and show links on my personal social media pages as well. Look for Bob Rose on Facebook and at Bobby R over on Twitter or X or whatever you kids are calling it now.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to follow Saints, give Bob a follow. It is worth it. And Bob, once again, appreciate the time and I look forward when we can get to do this again.
Appreciate you, my friend. You be well. We'll talk soon.
All right. Once again, thanks to both Mike Parris and Bob Rose for coming on the show. A lot of fun talking to both them guys, and we're getting closer and closer. Football, we've got NFL preseason. High school football is kicking off this week with regular season games, and also, of course, college football is right around the corner. So a lot of football stuff going on, and a really exciting time, especially if you live in the South. We live and breathe football, so it's a very fun time. Now I'm going to get into two other topics. I want to get my thoughts on top 5 SEC quarterbacks for me, and also some preseason rookie quarterback thoughts.
All right, let's get into my top 5 quarterbacks in the SEC entering the 2026 season. I always enjoyed doing this when I was at Last Word on College Football as an article before every year. So, hey, let's make it a podcast segment. And obviously, the SEC is loaded with talent at quarterback. You can make arguments for some other guys to be on this list, but these are the 5 I'm going with based on what they've already done, what they're walking into the season, and what I expect from them in 2026. Let's start at number 5. Byron Brown at Auburn. Yes, I'm going with Auburn here. And maybe there's a little Auburn bias here, but the numbers back this one up. Brown was the only quarterback in college football last season to throw for more than 3,000 yards and rush for more than 1,000. He finished with 3,158 yards passing, 28 passing touchdowns, and then added 1,008 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground. That's 42 total touchdowns. So we're talking about a guy who has already proven he can put up the huge numbers in Alex Golsh's offense. And we've also seen him do it against SEC competition. Go back to South Florida's upset of Florida last season. Brown helped South Florida go into Gainesville and beat the Gators. Now he follows Golsh to Auburn. And one thing I really like about the situation is that Brown isn't coming into a completely unfamiliar offense with completely unfamiliar personnel. He has several guys from South Florida coming with him, including receivers he's already comfortable with. So while he's changing schools, he's not starting over, and we know what Byron Brown can do with his arm. We know what he can do with his legs. We know he fits Golsh's offense. Now we get to find out what that looks like with SEC talent around him every single week. At number 4, I've got John Mateer at Oklahoma. I think it's important when we talk about Mateer. 2025 season, that we remember what happened to him. He suffered a broken thumb on his throwing hand against Auburn. I don't think he ever really was the same quarterback after that. Before the injury, we were talking about this guy as a legit Heisman Trophy candidate. Then he hurts his thumb, has surgery, comes back probably sooner than anybody expected, and it didn't just impact him throwing the football. It changed him as a runner, too. That's a huge part of what makes John Mateer dangerous. So now we're entering 2026 with a healthy John Mateer, and I think there's a chance we see a much different version of him than the guy we saw during the second half of last season. If he's healthy and gets back to being the dual threat quarterback we saw before the injury, Oklahoma has one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in the SEC. Number 3, I'm going with Gunnar Stockton. The explanation here is pretty simple. The dude is a winner. Maybe he's not going to generate the same type of hype as Arch Manning. Maybe he's not going to put some of the crazy numbers that Trinidad Chambliss or Byron Brown can put up. But Gunnar Stockton wins football games. Last season, he completed nearly 70% of his passes, threw for 2,894 yards and 24 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions. And he did it as the starting quarterback at Georgia, where he expected to compete for SEC championships and national championships every single season. There are going to be some new pieces around him this year, particularly at receiver. So that is something I'm watching. But when I look at quarterbacks in this conference and ask, who do I trust Gunnar Stockton. He's tough. He's experienced. He doesn't have to be Superman for Georgia. He just has to continue being Gunnar Stockton. Then at number 2, I've got Arch Manning. We spent years hearing about Arch Manning before he ever became the full-time starter at Texas. And I think we have to put last season into some perspective. The preseason expectations for Arch Manning were basically unattainable. Before he even had gone through a full season as a starting quarterback, people were talking about the Heisman Trophy, the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, and leading Texas to a national championship. That's a ridiculous amount of pressure to be put on a first-year starter. Then you open the season against Ohio State. He struggles. Texas loses. And I think that's still what a lot of people remember when they think about Arch Manning's 2025 season. But go back and look at the second half of the year. He played good football, and you could see him becoming more comfortable. You could see the game slowing down for him. He looked much more like the quarterback everybody expected him to eventually become. So I think we have to separate the expectations for what actually happened on the field. Last season wasn't perfect, but we saw him continue to develop as the year went along. And now look at what Texas has put around him. Cam Coleman comes over from Auburn and gives Manning an elite weapon at wide receiver. You still got Ryan Wingo there. Then look at what Steve Sarkisian did at running back. Texas added Raleek Brown from Arizona State and Hollywood Smothers from NC State. So now Arch Manning has weapons all over the field. Coleman can potentially become that true number 1 receiver. Brown and Smothers give Texas explosiveness out of the backfield, and you still got Steve Sarkisian designing the offense. This is the year. We're not talking about what Arch Manning might eventually become anymore. He's experienced. He's surrounded by talent. He's playing for a team with national championship expectations. Now it's time to see if Arch Manning becomes one of the elite quarterbacks in college football. And at number 1, I'm going with Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. I don't think I have to make this one very overly complicated. Chambliss threw for 3,937 yards last season, 22 touchdowns, only 3 interceptions. Talking about being able to take care of the ball. This guy does it. Then he added another 527 and 8 touchdowns on the ground. He helped take LSU to the college football playoff as one of the best stories in college football, and now he's back. But what makes Ole Miss really interesting to me is the mentality they're going to have entering the season. The entire program has a reason to have a chip on his shoulder. After everything that happened around Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin's departure, and that playoff run, I think you're going to see a team that feels like it still has something to prove. And Chambliss is the perfect quarterback for that. We've already seen him perform at a high level in the SEC. We've seen him protect the football. We've seen the mobility. We've seen him perform in big games. I'm not ranking him number 1 because of what I think he might do. I'm ranking Trinidad Chambliss number 1 because of what we've already seen him do. So that's my top 5 SEC quarterbacks entering the 2026 season. Number 5, Byron Brown at Auburn. Number 4, John Mateer at Oklahoma. Number 3, Gunnar Stockton at Georgia. Number 2, Arch Manning at Texas. Number 1, Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. And I'm sure nobody would disagree with any of that. Look, I know the LSU fans are going to say, where's Sam Leavitt? I'm not as high on him as a lot of people are. That's just me. Because college football fans, are reasonable with these things. So they probably won't come at me about that or any of my other picks here. But that's my 5. I've got one final solo topic I want to hit. We got to the first week of the NFL preseason in the books, and there were a few quarterbacks who really stood out to me. And yes, I know what everybody's going to say. It's preseason. I'm not going to completely change my opinion of a player or team based on one game in August. We're not seeing complete game plans, guys. We're not seeing starters against starters. Coaches are evaluating players and trying different combinations. But that doesn't mean these games are meaningless. And when it comes to the rookie quarterbacks, there are three guys who really impressed me: Drew Aller, Ty Simpson, and Fernando Mendoza. Let's start with Drew Aller. Aller went 10 of 13 for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also added a touchdown on the ground. 3 total touchdowns. That's a pretty good way to introduce yourself to the NFL. With Aller, we already knew about the physical tools. We saw them at Penn State. He's got the size. He's got the arm. The question with him has always been consistency and whether he can put all those tools together. At least in his first preseason game, he did. He looked comfortable. He was accurate. He took care of the football, and he made plays. I'm not saying one preseason performance means Drew Aller is going to become a star, but if you're a Steelers fan, that's exactly what you wanted to see out of him. Then there was Ty Simpson, the former Alabama quarterback, who I will say this, and I still believe this, is a better pro prospect than Fernando Mendoza, just because Fernando Mendoza had so much working around him, and that's not his fault. Don't get me wrong on that. Ty Simpson, no offense line, no running game, receivers dropping the ball, and he continually stayed in the pocket and delivered good throws. He showed toughness through injury. He was injured without a doubt at the end of last season. So that's just kind of like my little 2 cents on that. But Simpson was great. Simpson went 21 to 25 for 190, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. 21 of 25. That's 85% completion percentage. I thought Simpson looked really comfortable operating the Rams offense. He wasn't trying to make the spectacular play every time he dropped back. He took what the defense gave him, made good decisions, and got the football where it needed to go. And I really like the situation he's in. If you're a young quarterback trying to develop in the NFL, getting to work in Sean McVay's offense isn't a bad place to be. Remember what he did with Jared Goff. We saw the talent Simpson had in Alabama, and now he's in a system where he can continue to develop. After what I saw in week 1, I definitely want to see more of Ty Simpson. Then there's Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza went 10 of 16 for 97 yards with a touchdown and no interceptions. The numbers aren't going to jump off the page like Aller or Simpson, but I wasn't necessarily looking for huge numbers from Mendoza. I want to see how he handled the moment. There's a lot that comes with being the number 1 overall pick. You're immediately viewed as the guy who's eventually supposed to change the direction of the franchise. For his first NFL action, I thought Mendoza looked poised. He didn't look overwhelmed. He looked through his possessions, made some good decisions, and looked like he belonged out there. That's really all I needed to see from his first preseason game. Those were my 3 rookie quarterbacks who really impressed me: Aller, Simpson, and Mendoza. But there was another young quarterback I watched who left me feeling different. Cam Ward. Ward was 5 of 12 for 57 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. And I'll just say it. I thought he was inaccurate. There were throws available that NFL starting quarterback has to make, and he missed them. Now, I'm not going to sit here and call Cam Ward a bust because he completed 5 passes in a preseason game. That's ridiculous. But here's my concern. The Tennessee Titans were bad last season. I'm looking for reasons to believe they're going to be significantly better this year. I want to see something that makes me believe Tennessee is ready to take a step forward. Watching Cam Ward in that first preseason game didn't give me that feeling. Actually, I came away thinking the opposite. The Titans might be bad again. Ward obviously has plenty of time to change my mind. Maybe we get to September and he looks completely different. But based on what I saw in week 1, I still have major questions about Tennessee. And while we're talking about preseason football, I saw something Tom Brady said that I completely agree with. Brady reposted an old clip from a 2010 preseason game when he was still out there playing deep into the game for New England. Remember, this wasn't some young Tom Brady trying to make the Patriots roster. By 2010, the guy had already won 3 Super Bowl rings. And Brady wrote, "Too many people looking for easy way out these days." And then he added, "When you're a football player in this football season, your job is to play football." And I'm with Brady completely. Somewhere along the way, we've gotten to this point where we're terrified to let anybody important play in a preseason game. And I understand the argument against it. You don't want Patrick Mahomes getting hurt in a meaningless game. You don't want your franchise quarterback getting rolled up on because you wanted him to play the second quarter of a preseason game. I understand protecting your investment, but there's a difference between being smart and basically wrapping your starters in bubble wrap until week 1. Guys need live reps. Practice isn't a game. Joint practices aren't games. You can try to simulate game conditions all you want, but you can't completely recreate what happens when you're playing another team in an actual game environment. I'm not saying your starting quarterback needs to play 3 quarters. Give them a series. Give them 2 series. Let your starting offense get into the huddle, call the play, get everybody lined up, and see a defense they haven't been practicing against every day and operate with an actual game clock. Get a hit a couple times. Get used to game speed again. Then get them out there. I think there's value with that. And here's another part of preseason football that sometimes gets forgotten. Fans are paying for these games. You're charging people NFL prices to come into these stadiums and watch preseason football. I don't think it's unreasonable for those fans to get at least a glimpse of the players they bought tickets to see. Again, nobody's asking Patrick Mahomes to play the entire game. Nobody needs Josh Allen taking 50 snaps in August. But a series, 2 series, I think that's reasonable. Get some work in, get comfortable, get used to the speed of the actual game again, and then get ready for week 1. That's why I agree with Brady. There are probably too many people looking for an easy way out when it comes to preseason. Football is a physical sport. There are always going to be risks. You can't eliminate every possibility of somebody getting hurt. At some point, you have to prepare to play football by actually playing football. So after the first week of preseason, those are my biggest quarterback takeaways. Drew Allen impressed me. Ty Simpson impressed me. Fernando Mendoza impressed me. And Cam Ward made me wonder if we're looking at another long season in Tennessee. And when it comes to whether established players should actually see the field during the preseason, I'm with Tom Brady. When you're a football player and it's football season, your job is to play football. I couldn't have said any better.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Phillip Jordan Show podcast. Once again, I appreciate you checking out the show, making it a part of your day. Remember, you can follow me on social media at PJordanSports. Podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also watch the interview, check out the show over at the Phillip Jordan Sports YouTube channel. So please do that as well. Be back next week with another show. Confirmed, we will have Adam Spencer from Saturday Down South. He will be on the show. We will be previewing the 2026 SEC football season. We do this once a year, and of course, next weekend we've got college football week 0. We got a few games, so it's going to be fun on the show next week. And with high school football returning, it means the Wiregrass High School Football Report will go to weekly episodes once again. And I'm doing something different this year. With that, I'm going to do the Wiregrass High School Football update. So what that'll be like a scoreboard show, Friday night, 15, 20 minutes, go over the scores. We'll see. Maybe they'll grow into longer than that if we really get a lot of interaction from people checking it out. So on the Wiregrass High School Football Report, that's mostly now just going to be coach interviews and just interviews, because I will take care of all the scores and the upcoming schedule for the next week during the Wiregrass High School Football update. So a lot of stuff. It's going to be busy times right now through the rest, pretty much until February when all football season ends. But can't have it. Wouldn't have it any other way. Love it. And as Josh Pate says, the grind is a blessing. But anyways, I hope everybody has a great rest of their week. And always remember, let kindness be your compass. Bye-bye.